Stop by Cheryl Fila's home in rural North Bend during harvest, and you'll likely see her busily preparing a hearty lunch for her family and their hired hands.
This is when he came and worked on the combine, and that's how he charged it out.
Okay.
Or working with her daughter-in-law on the books for their farm.
So this one, push down. There you go.
You may even catch her with some of her most favorite little people, her grandchildren. These are just some of the many things Cheryl now enjoys after retiring from a successful nursing career that began a long time ago in a place very far away from home.
It was getting towards my senior year. I was running out of money. You know, you went to school year-round, so you really didn't have the opportunity to get a job and get some money to continue your schooling. Well, at that time, things were pretty heavy in Vietnam. A lot of fighting, a lot of need for nurses.
In 1966, Cheryl was entering her final year at St. Elizabeth's School of Nursing in Lincoln when she and 4 other young women went to a recruiter's office to enlist. In return for paying for her senior year, Cheryl committed to 2 years of nursing duty in the United States Army. After graduation, Cheryl went to basic training in Texas. Upon completion, she was assigned to an Army hospital in Alabama. 6 months later, 21-year-old Second Lieutenant Cheryl Thurber would be in Vietnam, 55 miles from the demilitarized zone. The year was 1968.
I was actually assigned to the emergency room, and so with that came 4 to 6 corpsmen and 2 interpreters, and we relied heavily on them.
Chu Lai Air Base was located on the coast of the South China Sea. Cheryl was assigned to the 27th Surgical Hospital, where she assisted with triage and minor surgery.
Our day usually went with either the ambulatory would come in or the people from the village. No matter where you were, if you heard helicopters coming in, everybody went to their stations because you knew things were going to happen. On a heavy day, they would land, you would go out, you get the patient, you bring them in, he took off, another one would come in. And they would maybe be as full as they could possibly be and still take off. If you were wounded and you made it to the ER, your chances of survival were pretty good. So the helicopters were a big part of getting these fellows back to us.
When the wounded poured in, identifying them was often a complicated process.
Somebody would come from medical records to take names, and they would have dog tags, the guys, but we didn't always rely on those because the VC and the Viet Cong liked to switch those around. So those who could answer, we would get their names and stuff. If they couldn't answer, if we couldn't get anything, then they were marked with a number, either on the face or the shoulder, somewhere where they would be identified, and the paperwork would go with them. The thing that I remember about these guys the most is that most of them just wanted to be patched up so they could go back out. You know, they had their comrades back there, that they all had each other's back. They were, you know, they relied on each other, and their big thing was, I got to get back. You know, sometimes they could, sometimes they couldn't.
Cheryl found that providing immediate medical care sometimes included small comforts.
So many of the guys would come in and the first thing they'd want was a cigarette. So I kept cigarettes and a lighter with me. And one of the gentlemen that came in, a young man, he had lost his lighter. And so I said, well, here, you take mine and I'll just go to the PX and get another one. So he did, he took it. And it was a couple of months later, this young man showed up in the ER, and it was this kid, and he came to return my lighter.
But not all servicemen survived. A morgue sat near the hospital, and when the ER was empty, Cheryl helped identify the dead.
The hard part was when the helicopters would come in later with the body bags. There was just one time I remember I was with the doctor and we opened up a body bag, and this soldier looked intact. You know, he looked fine until you went to lift his head. You did your best. You did what you could. You know, you can't do more than that. You can't do more than what you're actually able to do. And you have to come to grips with that. And I think once you come to grips with that, it's not that you like it, but you have to accept it.
Cheryl herself was in harm's way. Chu Lai was a major military air base and was regularly targeted by the Viet Cong.
There was always a threat that something would happen. And in fact, there was a nurse in Chu Lai that died. She died after I was there from shelling that came into her ward. But for the most part, I didn't really feel unsafe because the soldiers all kept their weapons. We had barrels outside of the wards filled with sand, but we had like all kinds of guys around us with weapons, and we would end up in the bunker, you know. So I never really felt like I personally had to defend myself. I felt taken care of.
Working a 12-hour shift nearly every day of her year-long tour, there wasn't much downtime. But when she could, Cheryl would spend time on the beach.
It was very serene there. You know, you could lay on the beach, soak up a little sun, get in the water. When you got there, you basically were in another world. Every once in a while, you'd hear the helicopters come in, and the helicopters that came in towards evening, you appreciated because they came in and they fired into the water to keep the sharks and stuff back. And this is what they told me. I took their word for it. I don't know. I didn't see any sharks.
Cheryl's tour came to an end in 1969. When she returned to Nebraska to continue her nursing career, she found herself on a steep learning curve.
My biggest adjustment, I think, was the medications were all different. Everything had changed. I mean, they weren't all different, but they had had such advancements in pharmacy, such advancements in technical use of equipment.
As her life moved forward, Cheryl's memories of Vietnam faded to the background. She married, had children, and helped her husband grow their farm, all while working as a nurse. Her quiet and gentle manner makes it seem impossible that this nurse, mother, and farmer's wife experienced the darker side of human nature.
I didn't talk about it at all for probably 20 years. Even my folks didn't ask. Well, my dad had been a World War II veteran, so I think he knew enough not to ask. When my oldest daughter was a junior or senior in high school, and they found out locally I'd been in the service. So they had asked me to speak to her class in a history class, and I said that I would. And so I went and I told them a little bit about it. You know, it was a short synopsis. And she came home and she says, "How come you never told me?" You know. And I said, well, it just was never brought up.
Among the statues at the Veterans Memorial Park located in North Bend, Nebraska, stands a bronze sculpture of a young woman in uniform. Resolute in posture, she stands with her brothers in arms, ready to answer the call to duty.
Well, it needed to be done. Who was going to do it? You know, if you didn't volunteer to go over and take care of these people, who was going to do it? Fighting for the right thing. That's all. Simply